So welcome everyone. This is our very, very, very first live episode that we're doing on behalf of the Spark Festival. We've actually got 2 of these coming up. This is the first one. Never done a live episode before, so you're going to might have to bear with us. Not sure how it's going to go, but I have a very easy couple of guests as my first ones because I know them very well and we've done lots of work together. And we are going to be talking about the subject of marketing and how to blow your budget really easily in startups. So there's a lot of things that startups do that aren't necessarily the most, I guess, intelligent or quickest or the smartest thing to do when they're starting their businesses. And we want to help you avoid those mistakes that could blow your budget that will not necessarily get you the results. So on that, I'd like to introduce you to both Steph and Ali King, who are sisters, if you hadn't have guessed. And I've worked with these girls for, a couple of years now, and they've helped us as the Nudge Group with our website, with our digital strategy, with many, many things. And they are working with a number of startups in a number of capacities. I'll let them give why don't you give a quick overview of what you guys do, and then we'll sort of get into, what it is you're here to talk about to help the audience understand. Cool. So tell us, why don't you lead, Steph? Tell us what you do.
Great. So we are the co-founders of Ask Marketing. So we are essentially a digital strategy business. Yep. We develop and work with clients, both startups and more established businesses, to develop their marketing strategies and equip them with the tools and the understanding and the knowledge to essentially then go and execute that, whether via agencies who will do the execution or via internal resources who will do the marketing from inside the business.
Right. So let's start with the topic, which is, how not to blow your budget, which I think is really the key. So, Ali, why don't you kick it off? Like, maybe give us a little bit of an overview of the 3 things that you think are probably the most important.
Yeah, sure. So I guess the first thing would be brand marketing. So if we kind of dumb down what brand marketing is essentially the core messaging and the way that a business, speaks about itself and portrays itself to the market through the use of words, visual, and other creative elements. So brand marketing is essentially something that needs to happen first and foremost before a digital strategy can take place.
Yep, that makes sense.
We can dive more into that a little bit later. The second thing would be product marketing. So of course, for the founders that are out there building, their product or their app or their business, product marketing is essentially how the business works, how it's commercialized. Is it a 2-sided marketplace? Is it an app? Is it an e-commerce store? Is it
how does a consumer buy it?
Exactly. Is there a freemium model? Is it a free trial? Is it a 2-sided marketplace? Who are the who's the key the key market that we're going after? So that's the second thing, product marketing. Yep. And then the third thing would be digital strategy. And by that I mean a digital marketing strategy or a marketing strategy. So prior to a marketing strategy being able to take place, which is something that we would look after, those kind of key brand marketing elements and product marketing elements need to be kind of finessed first.
Okay, so that's a huge amount, right? So if you're a startup founder, which is our primary audience here, and you don't know anything about marketing, very much like I was when you met me, you tell me that those 3 key elements like that, I'm sitting there going, oh my God, how many people do I need to hire? What the hell? There's so much to do. Don't we just put an advert out kind of thing? Obviously, we know that's not quite what it is. But, there's a massive amount of content that and worry that I imagine would be going through people's minds. And that's why we're talking about this very subject. That to me would go, how much is this going to cost? I don't think I can afford it. Maybe we'll just do sales. So maybe, I guess if you had, if you want to do those 3 elements, how do you do that? What's the first thing that you guys would think about if you were a founder going, right, I've now learned that there are these 3 things that I've got to do. They sound really expensive. Where do I go from here?
Yeah. Well, essentially marketing itself, whilst it might sound, it is complicated to a degree, and there are lots of different facets of marketing. Brand marketing is one, product marketing is another, and digital marketing is a whole, and digital strategy, a whole nother thing. So there are experts and areas of expertise for each of those 3. So we would never say that one particular company or agency will be able to do all 3 for you. Yep. They are quite niche and they are quite specialised. So we support founders to essentially partner with the relevant organisations who can focus on each of those individual elements, with brand being first, product being related as well to the actual development of the product or service or the app that they're developing. That'll come into that developmental component. And then the strategy side is essentially when they'd partner with us and we'd go from there as the third key element.
The only thing I'd add to that is like a lot of the on the tech startup side of our business, that like the businesses that we work with, if you go through an accelerator or an incubator program, a lot of those key brand marketing and product marketing elements are, you're nurtured through that process. So they will help you develop your brand marketing components based on some user research and focus groups and things like that. And then they will help support that product marketing element through their tech support and developmental support and UX support and things like that. So yeah, I think when you go through an incubator, or an accelerator program, it can be a lot easier.
100%.
If you don't, that's fine too. But it means you're going to need to be willing to put in a lot of work yourself.
And let's talk. I mean, obviously, when I first met you guys, I'd never done marketing. You have changed my perception of marketing. I think if you looked at my first two businesses, well, there wasn't any marketing really, other than the old bit of brand website. Really, really basic stuff. What I've learned through you girls in the last 2.5 years is marketing is everything, and I've become quite obsessed with it almost, which is why we're talking about it today. But I've really learned the power of it. And the thing that I remember at the beginning when I first met you was, one, I was, terrified at the cost. And when you did come back to me, I was surprised at how little it did cost. But there was a lot of stuff that I could do personally without any marketing knowledge that really started to get the ball rolling. So maybe give us some examples of, I'm not going to say what I did because I keep that secret, but no, tell us some of the things that you can do without actually having to employ anyone, go to an agency or anything. If someone like yourselves gives you a strategy, what kind of things would you be suggesting for founders to do themselves to kick it off?
Great. I mean, a good thing, or the first thing we'd always recommend, regardless of your budget or your team, if you have staff yet or not, would always be thinking about a lot of the organic content development can be done in-house. So I'm not talking about the beautiful polished video ads that you're going to see on YouTube. I'm talking about that really authentic storytelling piece that shares your brand organically across social media channels. So that's absolutely something that can be planned and potentially tackled depending on your skill set and how comfortable you are in front of a camera being really authentic. How confident you are in using Canva and designing really, makeshift or authentic designs. It doesn't always have to be the polished, beautiful assets that are typically used in advertising and on the website. So think about that first. And I think having that as a starting point would be, we know, as with any marketing content, is the fundamental of that.
So what you're saying is, you don't need to come to a studio like this, right? You can sit in front of your webcam and the authenticity is the key, right? Is that what you mean?
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think depending on the business, if the founder, in your case, you were the business and the face of the business is you. So that can be absolutely shone in content because of that.
Yep.
If you're selling a particular product that, a dog walking app, you technically are not the face of that dog walking app if you're selling, so it kind of needs to be dependent on the business. But where possible, I guess, telling that story authentically in content on organic social media would definitely be something that you can tackle.
So you used a word there that some people might not know, and there's a lot of terminology in marketing that I've learned, but organic, for example. So tell me what you mean by organic for anyone who doesn't know.
Organic would be any social media channel that you don't have to pay to post on. So when you post a post on Instagram feed, Instagram story, and don't pay a cent for it, on your personal page, that's organic. When you're posting a YouTube video and it's not an ad, that is organic.
Yeah, okay. And talking about organic, and we used a lot of LinkedIn, obviously, because of the nature of our business. We're not necessarily a consumer business. Ali, one of the things you said to me at the beginning, because I'd created this beautiful company page, you said, don't put anything on that. Don't use that. Use your personal one. Explain to me why, because I think that's another mistake that a lot of business owners make. They go, all right, well, I'm going to create a company Instagram, a company Facebook, a company LinkedIn. I'm going to post everything and I'm going to keep the two very separate. And you were like, no.
If we take a step back, I think, if we think about those first three things that you asked us, what are the first three things that you need to do? The third thing was the digital strategy. So the digital strategy, which is the part that we help with, essentially will lay those foundations based on your business objectives, based on the product or the business itself, and based on your customer personas, what channels you should play on. In your case, the channels that we recommended in your strategy to play on, did include LinkedIn. The way LinkedIn, works, as a platform is as it works best as kind of an educational, human-to-human element that connects business decision makers, right? So at the end of the day, many of the digital strategies that we develop, not just for, the startups, but for more mature businesses, do include LinkedIn. However, the funny thing is about it is that at the end of the day, even though a marketing strategy might be B2B, the reality is you're still talking to business decision makers and it's really human to human. So the way that LinkedIn works still to this day is that, personal content does definitely perform better and the algorithm is skewed that way. So we would always recommend that in startups, like for example yourself, before you had a team of people, you would be sharing out the content from your own personal LinkedIn page and then resharing it to the company page. If you're in a larger business, for example, perhaps a business that has, a head of sales, a head of marketing, perhaps, some other, key business leaders, that each of those business leaders would be sharing relevant content out from their personal pages relating to the company, and that all of that content would then be reshared to the company page. People like to interact with people, right? So it makes sense that it works that way. You definitely do still need to have a company page. I think, that's really important. I think business leaders can sometimes be fearful of allowing their senior leaders and their employees to post about the company from their personal pages because there is this fear of, potentially losing a staff member and LinkedIn being a recruiting tool, but which it can be as well. But it really needs to be used that way because people interact with people and they relate to people. So.
Okay, so let's talk about, you talked about the three elements, right? So we talked about, make sure I get this right, brand, digital, and product. Now, if you're doing organic content, so free content you're creating yourself, whether it be a video or whether it be a post of an image or a picture or any of those things, is that, to me, that's sitting across all three. Is that right? Because, you're building your brand, you may be talking about your product, and it's on a digital platform. So even though it sounds like there's three key elements, that sounds like a lot, actually one single post on Instagram, LinkedIn is actually covering all three, right?
I would say slightly, let's take a step back and say that I wouldn't recommend starting any organic posting until brand marketing is fully fleshed out and finessed. So you want the look and feel of your brand and the storytelling that you're going to present to the market to be 100% finessed and fleshed out before you go and start posting on your channel.
What does that mean? So how do you finesse a brand? Tell me what that actually means.
So graphically and visually, what does it look and feel like? So in your case, we're talking about the logo, we're talking about the colours, we're talking about in your podcast, this is the set and this is the vibe and the visual that you're creating.
White chairs.
White chairs. And then on the flip side is the copy and the messaging. So is your strapline finessed? Is your unique value proposition finessed? Again,
I'm going to stop you every time you use a word that people might understand. Strapline. Tell me what strapline is, because I didn't know. To me, that sounded like a piece of beef.
Great. Strapline is that piece of statement that in 3 to 10 words represents what your brand is and does.
Right.
Think about the hero section of your brand new website.
Yep.
You go into your brand new website, the Nudge Group, and you'll see very, very much straight away what you're all about.
In the hero banner of the website.
I learned more doing that website than I've ever learned in the entire rest of my 48 years on this planet in terms of buzzwords and about marketing. So yes, I do. So okay, so you've got your strapline, and that's something that you would do yourself, or would you recommend engaging? So we're talking about doing a lot, as much as we can without blowing a budget here, right? So how would you recommend going about that? Is that there are some elements that I think you need someone to help you, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And again, it kind of comes back to that earlier conversation. If for the founders that are out there, if you are going through an incubator or an accelerator program or not. And the reason that I guess I would kind of categorize it like that is because typically if you go through an accelerator program, a lot of our founders do, for example, they might come through the Hyper Accelerate program, for example. The Hyper team will provide a lot of those key branding elements to their founders within that accelerator program, meaning that they don't need to go outside of that program to find a brand agency. If you are not going through an accelerator, the best place to start would be to have have as much of an understanding about what you're trying to create as possible. Obviously, if you've got a concept, you're not nowhere near MVP at this point. To engage in a brand marketing agency. So that's not a digital marketing agency. That's not a strategy business like us. That is someone who specializes in brand marketing and messaging. So someone who's able to really kind of pull all of those amazing pieces of information out of your brain and and understand, based on your target persona or personas, how to use the right messaging to explain what you do in a very succinct fashion to your target market. So they will develop your USP, they will develop your strapline, they will finesse what your brand colors will be, they will finesse your brand guidelines, they'll probably give you some understanding of what imagery that you can use and what your tone of voice will be. And then that, paired with all the product marketing elements and commercialization things, will be then handed to us as digital strategy experts to allow us to then go and shape the strategy. So in summary, if you're going through an accelerator or an incubator program, you should probably ask, they will probably support that process, probably more so than if you weren't. And if you're not going through an accelerator or an incubator process, you will need to go and engage with a brand marketing expert for sure.
Okay, so if we look at that, let's say we haven't got anywhere near the stage of employing someone yet, whether that be full-time or part-time, right? You are going to have to spend some money, right?
Yes.
So it's not, let's not blow the budget, but you're going to have to spend some money. Where would you say, we're talking about a brand agency there, right? Where would you say are the smartest places to spend your dollars before you get to that point where you actually do employ someone either on a part-time or full-time basis? Where do you start? Where do you go?
Great.
A little bit of a roadmap.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I think that brand marketing piece is fundamental, because if you don't have those fully fleshed out and succinct, so if I am a brand new user to the business, the app, the product, and I don't immediately understand what it is you're offering, you're wasting your money. You're wasting your advertising budget, you're wasting your time, you're wasting everything. And so that's why, we're not recommending you spend money unnecessarily, but having those brand marketing components fleshed out and finessed to a T to start with will save you money in the end.
Right.
Number one.
Number one.
The product marketing components, as we talked about, often will be incorporated into the actual development of the product itself. So if it's an app and you are working with an incubator or you're not, things like, is it a freemium offering? Is it a free trial? Those kind of tactical commercialization principles and how a user signs up will be done generally in your web dev phase. And the third thing is the strategy, and that would be fundamental to any long-term success of a business, and you know this personally, Steve, is the development of a digital strategy. So essentially that will entail the development of all the resultant digital marketing tactics and traditional marketing tactics where suitable that essentially fit the customer personas, so the target market that you're wanting to hit, the overarching business objectives that you're wanting to hit, and it covers all the tactics across the marketing funnel. So if you think of a funnel like this, you've got brand awareness up the top, interest and consideration, registration, and essentially conversion of purchase. And so a strategy will essentially equip you with the recommended tactics at all phases of the funnel that you should be striving to activate or to action.
Okay.
And off the back of that, then a founder can make the decision with the support. And what we do with our founders is essentially give them the opportunity to say, I would like to embark with a digital agency to execute on XYZ tactic. I would like to hire an internal resource because I feel like I'd like someone in-house to help. And we can support them to be like, great, well, they can manage XYZ tactic. And, it's kind of split up into different components because there are so many facets of marketing that require expertise in the different areas.
Absolutely. And look, I think another thing I really want to touch on this, because there's a big difference between consumer and B2B, right? And, in us, we were kind of both in some respects. And I know you come from a very strong B2C background, Ali. If you're going to advertise, right, to me, this is like a dark art, right? So we're talking Facebook ads, we're talking Google ads, pay-per-click, SEO, all these kinds of these things. And having recruited these roles, I know how much these experts also get paid. So this is not a simple thing to do, right? So if someone wants to go and have a crack at Facebook ads, or if someone wants to go and put a Google ad out or something like that, or a banner on something or whatever it be, would you recommend that that's somewhere where they need to go and get some expertise, or do you reckon they can muddle along and learn it? Or what are your thoughts? Again, we're trying to keep the costs down because we're still very early stage and it can be expensive. So what are your thoughts on that?
Again, it comes back to the marketing strategy. So, and understanding what the priorities are. So, for example, if we work with a founder who, you touched on, the B2C space. So, if we're working with a founder that has predominantly a B2C offering, and their digital marketing strategy or their marketing strategy includes some elements of advertising, first and foremost, we need to talk through what the budget for that is going to be. So you asked, if they should muddle their way through a few things. If a founder is bootstrapped, potentially before, some funding has come in, then the conversation about advertising is really about what they can afford to do. So if they are really working to a budget, the reality is they're probably not going to be able to dabble in all of those advertising tools without some support, because they are going to blow their budget pretty quick smart. So, a lot of what we do is at the end of that digital marketing strategy process is understanding, based on, again, it kind of comes down to the values of the founder. Like, a lot of founders that we work with are very comfortable in working with, external parties. And they'll say to us, just this morning we had a meeting with a founder who said, I always foresee my majority of my marketing will be outsourced with agencies. But other founders are very much like, I would like to have that, as much of the marketing team internal to my business when I can afford to have that. And then I'll outsource some of the advertising elements. So in answer to your question, you can absolutely fumble your way through things if you're willing to, test and be a little bit hands-on and learn a little bit yourself with a very small, controlled budget.
So it's dangerous, right?
It's very dangerous. It's really dangerous. And, so often, on the other side of our business, working with founders who have got much more mature businesses, who might be 10, 15 years old, who have fumbled their way through it for many, many years and burned hundreds of thousands of dollars not doing it properly. So in answer to the question, I would say, absolutely give things a go yourself, behind the scenes, potentially in like quite a safe environment with a very controlled budget, just so that you get a feel for how these platforms work. I know that many founders who are probably listening to this are, they're founders because they like getting their hands dirty and coming up with these things. So absolutely get involved and have a look. Should you be managing it for more than just a test? Probably not.
It can be a little bit control freaky as well, founders.
Yeah. And they're never going to be the experts at it.
No, that's
why they're.
Otherwise, they don't. Yeah, if they're experts at it, they're just doing it, right?
Yeah.
All right. Before we get on to hiring someone, because I do want to come to that, and I'll use my example for that because I think it'll probably ring true with a lot of people. But before we get on to that, what are the dangers? And what I mean by that is, like, let's say I don't go to a brand agency. Let's say I don't have a strategy. Let's say I do fumble around. What can be the outcomes of just having a crack and just stuffing it up and not necessarily putting out a consistent message and maybe having the wrong imagery for your brand and all those things that we've just talked about that you have to get right? If you don't do that, what can happen? What have you seen? Are there any absolute disasters? Maybe we won't name anyone because that would be inappropriate. We all know those anyway, right? But yeah, what can be, and how hard is it to recover if you do go out and do it wrong?
Yeah, and I mean, that is the challenge, isn't it? It's we've seen it time and time again, whereby a startup will essentially try and eliminate all costs as much as possible in the start and go to market with potentially a marketing message that is not finessed. It's very unclear. No one knows what it actually means. And I think that's fundamentally why the results don't kind of come to fruition from that. So, I mean, at the end of the day, an unsuccessful business is a result because you're not making sales, you're not converting customers, and that's very clear. And it is quite hard to kind of come back from that, because if you've just launched and it's kind of flumped and you've realised that people don't get it and they're not converting.
No one's buying.
Correct. It's almost like starting over again from scratch. So investing in the critical elements from the get-go would always be our recommendation to ensure success from the start. And I'm not necessarily saying there's going to be results straight away. And the foundations need to be built, and the testing and refinement will always be there.
Yeah.
But
is it worse? Is it harder to recover than it is to start from scratch? You say it's like starting from scratch, but is it actually worse than that?
Yes, absolutely.
Disaster.
The only thing I would probably add to that is that often founders come to us and they almost, and our process of determining whether they're ready for a digital marketing strategy is almost a vetting process. So, for example, if a founder jumps into a meeting with us,
how did I get through?
You're on the scale up journey now. You're not so much a startup anymore. But I would just say that if a founder comes to us and they believe that they've checked all those boxes off, the ones that we just talked through, and they're explaining to us very excitedly what their product's about, and we just don't get it. Like
That's a real problem.
But honestly, it happens more than you can probably imagine.
Yeah.
So, and we just don't get it. And that's a really critical thing to note, I guess, not the fact that we are vetting them as to whether they're ready to come on board, us developing a strategy for them or not. But if we don't get it, that means that we can't develop a strategy and then go and execute, put the right people in place and the infrastructure in place to execute on that if it's not very clear what they do. I mean, you can go and invest hundreds of thousands of dollars in the best product in the world or the best app or the best e-commerce store with all of the most amazing functionality, selling the best products perhaps. But if nobody understands what it is, how are they going to get there?
Yeah. Well, we've all seen that. I've seen ads where I've looked at whoever's in the room and gone, "The heck was that for?"
Not sure. Yeah.
What does that do?
All right. I want to come on to the next subject because time's ticking along and we've got a question section coming up. So last question I'll ask you before we go to the general questions. As you may remember, we created a wonderful strategy of which I executed very little because I had no time. And you would ring me up and go, "You don't appear to have executed any of the things." I'm like, "No, I'm going to do it tomorrow." And then the next week and the next week and nothing. And some of the early things we did had great success. So that left me no time. So I couldn't continue. So I began to lose momentum. And you remember this, right? Because you were literally just going, "Well, that strategy we created is not relevant anymore because you've gone so far and you haven't executed any of it." So then we went and hired someone, right? And that's been fantastic. And has been, a wonder to our business. And it's having it outsourced into an individual who just does everything. And then we have a meeting once a week has been one of the best things I've ever done. How do you go about finding that person? How do you decide? Because like we talked about, there's three elements. There's digital, right? Well, there's lots of digital specialists. There's lots of brand specialists. There's lots of product specialists. You don't want to hire three people. So how do you work out what you want to outsource and what you want to bring in-house and all those kinds of things? I mean, it was very easy for us because my marketing was very focused around content. So we hired a head of content, right?
Yes.
Simple. But if it's not that clear for you, how do you go about doing that?
Yeah, I'm happy to start first because I work very closely with Heyo, and I think it's really important in your case, Steve, to help everyone else understand that Heyo, who is now your internal marketer, is the content marketer. So we're not saying that he is doing advertising, SEO, content marketing, email marketing. He is not doing it all. He's doing the content.
I do ask him to do all of those things as well.
And he probably says no.
He probably tries as much as he can.
He smiles.
And so I think that's probably really important to understand. And we're not, the search for a unicorn marketer.
No. Well, they don't exist, right? We know this.
We know that doesn't exist. And so in Heyo's case, he is the content marketer, and a lot of the components in the digital strategy that we developed relies on content, as most strategies do. So he's really managing and taking the reins of the content and distributing it across channels, as the strategy suggests. However, on top of that, in a phase 2 approach, there will be elements of getting additional specialists to support additional tactics in that strategy.
Which is what we did with the website, right?
Correct, which will be out of Heyo's scope and understandably. So we would always say that, picking someone, if you want to bring your marketing in-house and you really value that, definitely, as you've done with a content marketer, is a really great place to start.
Yep.
We would always recommend, if that person that you bring in-house is an advertiser and they're from potentially an advertising agency and that's their area of expertise, that would be great. Bring them in-house and then potentially outsource content for video content, graphic design, as you see fit. So it's never about finding a unicorn that can do everything. They don't exist. But in your case, it worked incredibly well to find that content marketer and then layer that with additional specialists from agencies or other freelancers or contractors.
Got anything to add on that, Ali?
I would just say most typically advertising, unless you are in the situation where your internal junior to mid-level marketer does come from an agency background. Perhaps they have gone from an agency and they've moved into a brand. We are seeing more and more of that now.
Well, Heyo had agency background. He's a writer at heart, right?
The copywriter, exactly.
But he'd been working, I can't remember which agency it was, Sparrow, I think it was, really big agency. He'd done a lot of different stuff. So he had touched on other things, but his core skill was to write, which for a dyslexic founder is a dream, right? So there's a little, but I guess...
And that's very rare in itself, can I say? Like, I don't think I've ever come across, I don't think we have ever placed, and nor have you probably ever recruited, a a digital marketing executive or a marketing coordinator, all the way through to a marketing specialist whose core skill set is copywriting. Copywriting is so...
It's a dying skill. It's a dying art, I think they say.
It is so important to either, you know, most commonly outsource the role of copy. I mean, you're in the situation that you don't need to do that.
Yeah.
I was just only going to add to that it is most common, and something that we most often recommend is to have internal content and the execution of internal content being done by someone in-house.
And we used, you know, when we did the website, we obviously used an external UX. We have an external graphic designer, and you know, we are slowly sort of building a team together. And I think for founders out there, if you can find freelancers that you can build up and build some relationship and trust with that aren't the crazy costs of an agency.
Yeah.
I think if ever we did a massive campaign, I don't know, well, I'd talk to my digital strategist about what we would do, but we're not planning on that at the moment. But yeah, I think that the method you've sort of helped me with is we happen to find, hey, that's great. Whoever you happen to find is fantastic. And then build little pockets of freelancers who charge, you know, nothing like the agencies, but often have just a skill. And, you know, in some respects, COVID has really created another whole marketplace of really highly talented and not overly expensive individuals working from country Victoria or wherever they are.
Absolutely.
Right?
I mean, Upwork will be your best friend, is all I can say.
That was my next question. Where do you find them?
Yeah. Upwork, you know, depends where you want them to be located, but there are Australian freelancers on Upwork who have part-time roles and they want to fill the bucket with freelance work.
Right.
And Upwork, you can find the most incredibly skilled marketers of all facets, not just marketing, you know, web dev, SEO, but, you know, again, we come back to the content piece, organic content, either written, graphic design would, you know, ideally be done in-house for efficiencies, you know.
Yeah.
You're here, you know, taking photos and posting it on social media, you know, is hard when if you're taking the photo, outsourcing it to someone else to make look beautiful. They send it back, they write the copy. It kind of not as efficient.
I think my advice would also be for people to get involved with all the people that are in your team, because then you learn more. And I've learned so much, and I still don't really know a lot, but I know a heck of a lot more than I did.
Yeah.
And it helps you. It just helps. I think it helps. Most founders will want their personality to be in their brand. That's just the nature of starting businesses. So I think that, you can't just outsource it and walk away. I can't just leave it here to talk to you and me never be involved.
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot less than I ever was. But yeah, I think you need to be, I think it's really important founders stay in touch with everything in their business, but particularly marketing.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Because that's where it comes. Just like the culture of a business, it all comes from there.
Absolutely.
Right. So now let's go to some questions because we're out of time nearly.
Oh.
Got my glasses because I'm getting older. So we've got some questions that are coming through. Let me have a look here. You ready for these?
Oh, we're ready.
It's exciting. This is the excitement of live television.
Hit us.
Okay.
We can't see you, but we can.
So there's a few here. I'm just going to, there's too many to get through. I'm going to pick the ones that entertain me. Okay, so Wendy Yu has asked, should I be on TikTok? I don't think she's asking about herself. I guess she's asking about her business. So TikTok is a great subject because it's not a platform that I use. My children are constantly on it. As a business,
Yes.
Is it a growing platform? Is it something people should be on?
The first question to ask yourself, Wendy, would be, what is your product or service or app, or what's the business? Does the business target Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z? If not, probably not worth your investment in time and money. If so, definitely look into it. From an organic standpoint, similar to Instagram in terms of it's really important to get your organic presence up and running. So posting organically to have a channel and kind of testing the waters with what works and what doesn't.
Do you have to pay for TikTok, or is it's totally free at the moment? Well, did Instagram started the same, right? And you could, but now you pay. Is that correct?
No, it's still free.
It's still free
to post organically. Yeah.
Oh, you're paying people to basically influence, and that's where that comes.
Yeah,
from. Okay.
exactly. So yes, it answers your question. Give it a try, Wendy, if you kind of your target market resonates.
Is it not just dancing, TikTok, or is it? I'm sorry, I'm really. The only thing my daughter ever shows me is people dancing.
It started off as that, and there's definitely now more elements of overlays with copy and fun. It's definitely the really fun, quick, engaging content that really quickly captures attention.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Cool. There you go, Wendy. Okay, Rajiv. This is an interesting one. Should I pre-launch a marketing campaign, or should I just go all in with a big launch? So I guess you talked about testing earlier. Then maybe that's what he's sort of talking about there. Ali, what do you reckon?
Yeah, so I would say for you, that it's really, really important, probably now more so than ever before, to have a stage of pre-launch marketing. And by that, I mean anywhere from 2 to potentially 3 or 4 months of pre-launch marketing, whereby you're building hype. You're driving your prospective users to a landing page, potentially before the app has launched, whereby you can capture their email address, perhaps their name, a little bit of information about them perhaps, so that you can first of all, obtain their data. Really important now to have your own first-party data with all of the privacy changes that are happening at the moment. So you're building hype, you're driving your prospective users to potentially a landing page, capturing their email address, their name, potentially a bit of information about them over a 2, 3, 4 month period, so that then you have all of this amazing data and you've built all this hype up so that you then have an audience to market to when you do launch. You can obviously incentivize people to do that. There's so many ways that we can talk about for hours and hours about how you can do that. But in answer to your question, yes, you should definitely have a pre-launch marketing strategy. And what I would say as well is that when we're developing our digital strategies, there is always an element of pre-launch marketing and the relevant tactics for that, and then it will change. Some things will continue, but the marketing strategy will change at launch, and by that I mean the conversion points and how success is measured, things like acquisition and things like that. Those conversion points will change from the pre-launch to the launch.
Because it's a lot of testing, and marketing ultimately is a lot of testing, right? You got to find out what works.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's cool. All right. Well, Jordan, this is a good question. I mean, the fact that you're watching this video, I think, answers this question. Is it worthwhile investing in video? And asking someone who's running a video show that and loves his video
You could answer that,
and here we
Steve.
are on video. I wouldn't dream. No, I'm just here to ask questions.
Right.
So, yeah, go for it.
I mean, in answer to that question, absolutely yes. I think there's a big budget pending. There's a big kind of lapse or gap in the market that creative through imagery and messaging just doesn't fill. And the storytelling piece, as we've said time and time again in this session, is so critical. So video content is an incredible way to tell that story immediately in a very engaging way. So the budget pending, again, the more you can invest in video and create that, the better. Doesn't necessarily need to be full hog production like this, as I said, but the more you can make it authentic whilst being of good quality, the better.
So I got a question for you about video, because I love video, obviously. I see a lot of video of people walking, holding a phone. Why are they walking? I don't understand. I don't have I understand people want to use webcams. I understand people want to use phones. I'm not saying that it's the quality. The quality is whatever you can afford. But why are they walking? Why are they walking through the park? Why do people feel the need to film when they walk? And why do we never see it when they obviously would walk into things? Because they're not looking where they're going. I don't understand why people walk. And I read an article not that long ago about it, and it really got me going. It was saying, why is everyone walking and shouting at their phones? And this is a good question. Why?
I mean, if we think about how you record content or how you fit content into your life, they might be founders, they might be influencers who are constantly needing to produce content. And I think anything that fits into your life, i.e. going for a walk where you might have your pram in one hand and a phone in the other, knowing that you can do that, and it's, I think it's about whatever fits in your life. I can't answer why they're...
But lots of people do it. It's not like it's a one-off. It's like everybody loves a bit of walking, and it's...
active.
Maybe it's COVID.
Probably
I didn't think
in the
about
same
that.
way that for the last 4 months we've been locked at home. I mean, every Zoom call I've had, the ones I can have, I'll have it whilst walking.
Isn't that right?
It has to work for you.
So you're a walker too.
We have a walking challenge.
Family walking challenge.
Family walking.
About 15 Ks a day.
Oh, wow. Who's winning?
Me.
That's why you brought it up.
Yeah, exactly.
Stephanie's about 0.2 behind me.
What time we got? Well, we got time for one more question. Let's have a look here. We've kind of touched on this, but we'll go through it again. So Melinda's asking here, when I hire my first person, how do I know what to look for? Which is a really good question, right? So even though we touched on it and we said you might hire a content or you might hire how do you, if you're not a marketer, how do you know what to look for when you're hiring someone?
Yeah, I mean, that is dependent entirely on the strategy. So I guess if the strategy is developed and you can see working with whether it's us or whether it's another digital strategy organisation is essentially prioritising what's feasible. So understanding what your budget is, looking at the tactics that have been derived throughout the marketing funnel, and understanding what can be brought in-house and what can't be brought in-house because of expertise, budget and skill set. So, in your case, Heyo was brought in as a content marketer, and that was by your choice. You found him, he was exceptional. So, I mean, we could ask you the same question about hiring in terms of looking for someone. We can talk about skill set. You would talk about other things that you'd look for when recruiting for a startup.
Yeah, look, from my, and Melinda, I think it was, my answer to that is I think if you're going to hire someone into your team that's from a marketing perspective, they have to embody your business, your culture, and your story. You know, we talk a lot about storytelling in recruiting as well, right? You've got to tell your story to find people who align with your story. So if your marketer is going to come and work in, oh my gosh, more than anything, they have to totally be into the product, into the business, and very much buy into it more probably than anyone else in your business. Otherwise, they're not going to be able to articulate it clearly. So that would probably be my answer for that one.
Absolutely. And then picking the skill sets that most fit that role that you're hiring for, of course.
So the question is, have we built a marketing department without blowing the budget? I think we have. Have we?
I think you absolutely have.
I think so.
I think you have.
You haven't even had to advertise.
No, I don't like advertising. I don't like the thought of it.
No.
Like I said, it's a dark art to me. It just, it seems, Well, we didn't touch on sponsorship. Sponsorship's where we're going at the moment. That's a new thing, but that's probably not, that's quite expensive.
Your content and your content marketing strategy has been, has been gold.
I have to say, it's blown me away. I don't know why we ever did traditional sales in recruitment. It's absolute lunacy. Not just the effectiveness of marketing, but the kind of people you attract are far better. Whereas if you're doing sort of direct sales, you don't really know who they are when you approach them. Whereas when they come to you, they come to you for a reason. So the success rate, the enjoyment of working with clients and candidates alike has been far greater. So yeah, it changed my life.
And you're clearly representing that in your content. You're attracting the people that, are like-minded, exactly like.
Yeah, absolutely right. Girls, thank you so much for being part of our very, very first live show. Thank you, everyone, for your questions and for watching and supporting everything the Spark Festival is doing, which I think is amazing. Second year and still remote. Hopefully next year we'll get some. We were going to do some physical events. We were going to do a live show out in the open air. That's where we would have done this if it wasn't for the second lockdown.
Next year.
I had all these images of building this amazing set in the park and all sorts. I don't know, but anyway, thank you so much, girls. Thank you very much, and we will hopefully see you again on the show probably sometime next year.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.